Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath Services, the first Sabbath in counting toward Pentecost. So 1 week has already passed by. And it's very clear when you read it in Leviticus 23 that you are to count 7 Sabbaths. And then listen to this. And on the day after the 7th Sabbath, you shall have a holy convocation, which then is Pentecost. Now, I have a question for all of those who believe an error. And an error is this. You worship and come together for Pentecost on a Monday. Now then, can you show me on any calendar that Monday is the day after the Sabbath or Saturday? Huh? Okay, that's a good one if you can do it. But some people are so hard-headed and so incalcitrant and so self-righteous that they refuse to recognize the truth. And therefore, they don't understand what they're doing. All right? Now, we had a very good session on Caravan to Midnight, and I spoke for almost the entire length of time in between the commercials. Now, we have it all edited and up online, and you can go to truthofgod.org, and you'll find a link so you can watch it. Now, the good news is that I'm already scheduled to go back again on the 30th of May. So that'll be interesting. And what I'm going to cover is the return of Christ and how that will be. And I'll throw a little in there on the rapture and show that there's no such thing as the rapture, and then move on to the rest of it. Now then, there's a lot of news to cover. A lot of things have happened and a lot of things are going to happen. So let's be alert and let's see how it's going to come about. Did you know that this year, 49% of the world's population is going to vote? The largest number ever. Now that's quite interesting, see, because God not only wants the leaders involved in what they're going to do, but also the people involved. Quite interesting, okay? So globally, and this is from the Strategic Intelligence Report, globally more voters than ever in history will head to the polls. At least 64 countries plus the European Union, representing a combined population of 49% of the people in the world, and are meant to hold national elections. And the results of these elections have ramifications for years. Now then, continually, whether of self-output, strategic materials, grains, high-tech, or social unrest, the international scene will impart to our money market such a domestic policies this year. Then he gives a following overview for each one. Now that's quite interesting, and we'll get to something here in a little bit as well that will tie right in with that, okay? Now, here's a bill passed by the House of Representatives, which will probably never become law. We'll have to wait and see. House passes controversial bill labeling certain Christian scriptures as anti-Semitic. Now, realize this. Whenever the Jewish lobby can come and have something to go against Christians, they do it. All the time. So that means that you have to eliminate half of the New Testament if you're going to be politically correct. They passed this, it was quite significant, but it just shows, they passed it 320 to 91. Now, it'll probably never become law, but this tells you what people are thinking and what the politicians are thinking and what the Jews are thinking. Now, I have yet to hear a single religious Jew, a single rabbi, including Jonathan Cahn. Now, he may admit it somewhat, but I have never heard a Jew say, the reason that we suffer so much persecution and trouble is because of our sins. They never say that. It's always them, it's always the enemy, it's always over here, rather than what they do. Now, what was the worst thing that they said when they convicted Jesus? That God took them up on what they said. Now, remember this. Whenever you say something to God, He's going to hold you accountable for you and take you up on it. What was it that they said? The last thing they said to Pilate before Jesus was led out to be crucified. Remember what they said? Pilate said, I'm innocent of this man's blood. What did they say? Let his blood be upon us and on our children. So the Jews have no one to blame but themselves for all the troubles that come against them. And I have yet to hear a single Jew admit to the truth. Now, if there's one who will, now, I may know one, Michael Heiss, but he's converted. Okay? So, we'll set aside converted Jews. But remember this also. Many Messianic Jews can never get away from the traditions of Judaism. They always drag them in. Okay? Now, let's look at the Chinese problem here. Okay? No, we won't look at that. We'll look at this. Okay? More than 100 million Americans expect civil war within 5 years. And guess what? That's exactly what they want to bring about. So they can destroy America. And America is being destroyed because as a nation and the Christian community and the population of the United States, the majority have turned their backs on God. And many of them are embracing absolute perverse Satanism. And there's a hatred toward Christians, toward Jews, toward the Bible. And as a matter of fact, one of the outlooks that the FBI has posted on purchases, to be careful that these people are not terrorists. And that is anyone who buys the Bible. So you see, the walls are closing in. The end time we're going to talk about is getting closer. So civil war. So how's that going to happen? It's been planned. Have you ever heard of the Cloward-Piven strategy? Are you aware of the Cloward-Piven strategies? These were two communist professors who devised a plan to take down the capitalist structure in the United States through mass illegal immigration that overwhelms the U.S. safety net programs and local governments. It is an international plan to collapse the United States. And guess who's one of the leading advocates of this as well? The Vatican. And all of the Catholic NGOs are busy in South and Central America helping facilitate all of these immigrants, aliens, to come into America. And we've covered the prophecy so many times we don't need to go there, that God says, because we didn't obey the voice of God, and because we were not thankful or cheerful to God, that the stranger within us would rise up high above us. Now, where are we? We're probably 50% there. Now then, here's their strategy. 4 steps. Number 1, overload and break the welfare system. Is that causing chaos in New York City and Chicago? Do they not have citizens protesting the city government in New York City and the federal government for sending federal government and debit cards to all of the immigrants and putting them up in the finest hotels, and they can't get their welfare payments? All right? Now, when Trump gets in, which he probably will, they're doing all they can so that he won't get in. But if he gets in, how much do you think he's going to be able to do unless he really understands what he himself must do? Now, he has brought out God more than ever before. That is true. But God will only listen to flatteries, as we find in Psalm 78, for so long. Sooner or later, all the words of the covenant that he had with Israel is going to take place, because every word of God is true. So the next one is, have chaos ensue. What do you think the millions of dollars flooding into the protest on the college campuses are all about, and other ones? And you look back at the 2020 election and look at all of the riots and look at all of the fires and look at all of the things that people were doing, and what do you suppose it's going to do when the election comes around? Probably somewhere about a month before the election, they're going to start cutting it loose. All right? Point number 3, take control of the chaos. And that's how then they can bring it down. They've already put the police in a category that they really can't work. And if they do, and if they would properly shoot someone, they will be charged with murder. So, that's how you take control of the chaos. Number 4, implement socialism and communism through government force. Just think what will happen if Biden is elected. I don't think that might not be a possibility. It could be. But there you have it. So you have the 4 steps laid out for us to see what's going to happen. And all of these things are the effects of our sins, and yet, just like the Jews never admitting their sins, most people will never admit their sins. Now, in the meantime, in America, there are some who are saying that they're looking for gun confiscation, which they call the Blue Dawn. And then they say the Red Dawn will be the invasion. Okay, well, I think the Red Dawn has already risen quite a bit. What about all of these tens of thousands of Chinese men who have come across the border and who have been financed by the Chinese government to get here? What do you think they're going to do? Eat Big Macs? They're here to control and fomate and to police the chaos so that it's more destructive. Okay? Now, a little bit more about Chinese military developing space assets at breathtaking speed. Remember, we'll see this in a little bit. There's going to be war in heaven. And they're working toward that right now. So who knows? And think about how much of everything that people do today is dependent on the cloud. And the cloud is what? The cloud is computer digital machines that collect all the information. And the pinnacle of that is AI. And AI is going to expand and expand and expand. Matter of fact, the G7 meeting coming up is going to try and address how they can make laws to control AI. See? Now, we've already experienced just with a couple of our messages online on YouTube. Now, Mike Flake takes the programs that we have and he edits them and cleans them up from any of the mistakes that we have, and he puts them on a YouTube page. Now, I mentioned some AI picked that up and killed the program. So that tells you what kind of control they're going to have. So what I want us to do is look at the big picture. Not just the leaders, not just the countries of Israel, but the whole world. Going to all be involved before Christ returns. So here is the background of G7. You can go online and you can look it up. Now, the main countries are the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, France, Japan, and Canada. All right? Then invited to this one that's coming in Italy is this: UAE, Australia, Brazil, India, Indonesia, South Korea, Vietnam, and the UK. Guess who also is invited for the very first time? And how does this fit into prophecy? Have any of you read what that is? The Pope has been invited to participate in the G7. Now, we'll see in a little bit that fulfills prophecy, okay? Now then, hostility toward Christianity increasing in the United States and Europe. What will happen is the only Christianity that will be allowed is Catholicism, because the Vatican has never ceased seeking to undermine and to destroy Protestantism and true churches of God. And if you analyze carefully what happened to Worldwide Church of God, that was a big-time takedown by the Christian establishment to control worldwide and take it down. See, now when Herbert Armstrong first started, he could get on any radio station. There were no problems in getting on. So it expanded and expanded. And as he was doing good, it went very well. And it grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And we were making inroads into the Protestants and into the Catholics. And it turned out to be the biggest Church of God in the history at that time. And it was causing problems. Well, at the same time, the television networks were forming religious channels so that any religion wanting to put on telecast would have to come to those television channels. Okay? So this means they could control every word that was said. Now, I know from a fact from Dwight Blevins that when the crunch came down on Worldwide, that the presenters in television, after Herbert Armstrong died, were told, you cannot speak extemporaneously on the video programs anymore. It all must be scripted, and the script must be approved by the advertising agency which purchased the time for the church. So that's what happened to the World Tomorrow television program. And that's what happened to the World Tomorrow radio program. Now then, hostility to increase against it, all right? Now let's look at something which is developing right now. Have you heard of the UN 2.0? Okay, it's coming this fall. I'll show you a picture of it right here. Okay, there's a big round table, and many nations are right there. See? Now, this is a fulfilling of prophecy, because God is going to let the world go its way under Satan the devil, thinking that they can solve the world's problems. And Satan is trying to prove to God that he was right. Okay? So what they're doing, this will be in September, the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly, as well as highly anticipated Summit of the Future, which nations will sign the so-called Pact of the Future. And that Pact of the Future will be what? Agreeing to a world government plan. Now that fits in with all of the prophecies that we have, okay? So look at it, all right? Quite a thing. So we'll cover various aspects of this in just a little bit. Now then, okay. Everybody take note of this. I've had a request that we do another session on questions and answers. So mark this down. May 18th. Sabbath, May 18th, we will have questions and answers. So you email them in or you write them in and you have them. And on the 18th of May, we'll have the whole service dedicated to answering questions. Okay? So we'll see how that goes. Now then, let's look and see and understand what Satan is doing. Remember the temptation that Jesus went through under Satan, the devil. First, about turning the stones into bread. Next, jumping off the edge of the temple. The last one was that if you bow down and worship me, Satan told Jesus, I will give you all the countries of the world. Now, see what we're having here? Okay? All the countries of the world. Never happened before this way. And so we're looking at some tremendous things that are going to happen. He said, all the world, all the nations and countries, their wealth, their power, and everything, I will give to you, for it has been given to me. And I, Satan, give it to whomsoever I will. See, now Jesus told him, be gone. But how many people are bribed and persuaded by wealth, by power? Okay? And how many people think that man is going to find a solution so that his problems will be solved? And it will probably come to a point that it will look like that might be possible. But the way of man under Satan can never replace the way of God. That's the whole battle of everything in the world down through time. So what we need to do is not get all caught up in the middle of that, but let's come to 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, and let's see what we need to do. Okay? 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. Let's see what we need to do. Now, at the time Paul wrote 1 Thessalonians, this was his first epistle in 52 AD. Now, things were bad enough at that time that even Paul had to explain to the brethren there in Thessalonica that, and then later in 2 Thessalonians about the man of sin, the son of perdition, okay, that don't get carried away with these things, okay? So 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 1. Now then, concerning the times and seasons, brethren, there is no need that I write to you, for you yourselves understand perfectly that the day of the Lord will come exactly as a thief comes by night. So, this is the point where it's going to start unraveling. Once they get all the nations lined up. For when they say peace and security, and isn't that the biggest thing that the governments of the world want today? Peace and security? What if they have an alliance of all the nations of the world, and we'll see that in just a minute in Revelation 13, they all sign up, and they start implementing things which will benefit everyone. Okay? Then sudden destruction will come upon them, as travail comes upon a woman who is with child, and they shall by no means escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, that the day of the Lord shall overtake you as a thief. That's why we have to watch, just like Jesus said. We have to watch events in the world, but more importantly, we need to watch events within the churches. And in addition to that, the most important individual thing is this: we need to watch ourselves. And with the Holy Spirit of God, grow in grace and knowledge, and not get carried away with anything that's going to take us away from Christ. Now let's see what's going to happen here. Let's come back to Revelation 13. All right? Now, as we read this, let's understand that this is happening right now before our very eyes. Now, we don't know how long it's going to be. We don't know everything that's going to take place, but we can see the downfall of Israel, in particularly America, Canada, and the UK, much more than those in Europe. But we see this developing. And when I read that article about United Nations 2.0 and what they plan, it reminded me of Revelation 13 and verse 1. Now, this is the Apostle John. Now, he didn't understand what he was seeing, except he was told to write it. He, I imagine, had some understanding, but as we were told in the book of Daniel, that the prophecies were sealed and closed until the time of the end. But the wise shall understand. And the wise ones are those who love God, who obey God, and who keep his commandments. Okay? Now then, John says, I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, coming up. That means it's developing. That's what we're seeing now, right now. Having 7 heads, and remember, they're going to have the what meeting? G7. Now, those 7 heads can change, okay? But the structure is there, okay? Then all the other nations that were invited, all right, 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, this is a worldwide thing. Never before has this ever occurred. And we can be thankful it's not going to occur again. And on the horns were crowns showing authority, government. Upon his head, the name of blasphemy. These are the ones who worship Satan directly. See? Remember the promise that Satan told Jesus, that if you worship me, all of this shall be yours. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard, and his feet the feet of a bear, his mouth the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his throne and his great authority. Now then, that comes from Satan. You go over here to chapter 12, and it says that Satan, that ancient serpent, has deceived the whole world. And that's what we see going on, right? All of the nations coming together, they all have troubles and problems. They want them solved. They want to work together. Okay? That's how it comes about. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So eventually it will come down to the authority of that one man and that one system behind the man. And this is what we see developing here now as never before. Now, something's going to happen. I don't know exactly how this is going to be. So let me ring my bell here. I have to reach over and get it. Okay. You often wonder, what was the deadly wound? Okay. We don't know. Now, for the system, when you look at it, you can find the chart in the back of the Bible about the rise of all of the kingdoms. For the system, what happened to Europe in World War II was a deadly wound. So the system. But what about the man who's the leader? What about the one who is the son of perdition? Okay. What about the one who's going to proclaim himself to be God? How does he get a deadly wound? Well, let's look over here. Okay. Revelation 12, verse 7. And there was war in heaven. Now, what did we just read that the Chinese are trying to do? And even other countries are as well. They're trying to develop the systems which can go through space to whatever satellite they have and destroy it. Okay? They're also trying to get a ray kind of gun that can zap from heaven right down to the earth and destroy. Now, a lot of people think that the fire that they had in Maui here earlier this year that destroyed that whole city quickly, some even have thought that that has come from the experimental weapon that has been developed to do that very thing. Okay? There was war in heaven. Now, this is a great war because Michael and his angel warred against the dragon, and the dragon and his angel warred. Now, we don't know what that is going to be like, but there's going to come a time, here's all this peace on earth, here's all this authority given to the world government, here are nations now beginning to work together, and it looks like that everything's going to work out, and then all of a sudden, could it be that in the person of the beast, that he's going to go up in space, and there's going to be a war up in space, and he receives a deadly wound because he's cast down. Now, I don't know, so I'll ring my bell again. I'm just saying, we don't know what it's going to be. Some think it's an assassination attempt against the man who is the son of perdition. But what if he gets into these space combat ships that they will have available and goes up in space, possessed of Satan, all of the demons coming up, following up that spaceship, and then they're met head on by Michael and all the angels of God. And then there's this war in heaven. Okay? So I don't know if it's going to be, but look at it. Okay? Now, it says here, and they did not prevail, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, who is deceiving the whole world. He was cast down to the earth, and his angels were cast down with him. Now, what do you suppose is going to happen then? Well, we'll use a phrase, common. All hell is going to break loose on the earth. and in the rapid succession of all the fulfilling of the prophecies. So he's cast down to the earth. Now, what do you suppose would be the most likely thing to do when that occurs? Maybe he'll have a wound with that and be revived. Then what does he do? Let's come here to 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, and let's read that. Okay? Would this not make sense? That after he was cast down, okay, that might coincide with the king of the north and the king of the south, as we find in Daniel, the 11th chapter as well. These things can come together that way. But here we have this concerning the return of Christ. Okay? Verse 3, 2 Thessalonians 2nd chapter. Do not let anyone deceive you by any means. So we must be alert. Now that's why I ring the cowbell. Because if I say something that is a thought that might be, does not mean that it's so. That means it could be a possibility, but let's look at it, but let's not accept that as dogmatic word of God, because it's not. Don't be deceived by any means, because that day will not come unless the apostasy shall come first. Now, we'll look at the apostasy here in a little bit after the break. But this means the whole world turning from God. Not just one man, not just one group, not just one church, but the whole world. And what is the Pope accumulating to himself now? All the religions of the world. Did you know that the Vatican sends greetings to the Buddhists and to the Hindus on their holy days? And who did the lovely kissing of each other? Pope Francis and the leading imam of the Muslim religion. The only missing one was a Jew. So think of that. These are momentous events. All right? Now notice, man of sin be revealed. Okay? Verse 4. The one who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God is not exalting yourself into the heavens to fight against God. Could that be a possibility? And cast down, and then when he's healed, he comes into the temple and says, what? I'm God. What can you explain concerning this? Or that is an object of worship, and he comes into the temple of God and sits down as God, proclaiming that he himself is God. Now, we've never had it in that kind of terminology, okay, that this is a singular event that then is going to trip off the whole tribulation at the end time, okay? So we need to look at that as a possibility, okay? Do you not remember that when I was with you, I told you these things, and now you understand what is holding him back in order for him to be revealed in his own set time? For the mystery of lawlessness is already working, only there is one who is restraining at the present time until it arises out of the midst. And the one who's restraining it is Christ. Now then, when we come, we'll close with this, and then we'll take a break. When we come to Revelation, the 4th and 5th chapter, what do we find with the 7 seals on it? Who has the scroll with the 7 seals on it. Who holds them? God the Father. Who does he give them to? Jesus Christ. Now, that tells us when the events unfold and the seal is opened, that certain events take place. So let's close with this. Let's come to Revelation 6 for just a minute. And again, let me ring my cowbell here. Okay. Revelation 6. And let's come to the first seal. And verse 1. And I looked when the Lamb had opened one of the seals. Okay. Christ is going to carry it out, but only at the time that the Father says. So none of these prophecies are anything that men can completely understand. Now, we still have some questions with this, so I bring it up in that point of view. And I heard one of the 4 living creatures say, like the sound of thunder, "Come and see." And I looked, and behold, and there was a white horse, and the one who was sitting on him had a bow. Now notice, no arrows. Isn't that interesting? And a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering and to conquer. The white horse we have always looked at as the coming last pope or false prophet. See? Now we'll cover this again after the break. Okay? But with the Pope going to the G7 for the first time in history, does this not make that prophecy come more alive, though many things have developed through the years leading up to it? Okay? So I'll ring my cowbell, we'll take a break, and we'll be back in 20.